Hello, welcome to the first video that I am planning to do based on the book written by Dr. John C. Maxwell, 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. That's the book I want to do, and I'm planning to do one video for each chapter. Today we are going to see the first chapter of this book. The first chapter is the law of intentionality. Growth just doesn't happen. So, Dr. John Maxwell, in this book, he talks about different laws of personal growth, because any growth that you want in life starts first with the personal growth, and that's the point. The first law is law of intentionality. Now, if I have to talk about law of intentionality before we go into that, I want to give one small example. This example I'm taking from one of the books that I read very recently, written by Alan Gannett. The book title is Creative Curve. In this book, there's one particular example that he has used. It's a very everyday life example. Alan Gannett speaks about 10,000 hour rule. I'm sure most of you would have read it, heard it in I think a book written by Malcolm Gladwell, which made it very famous. The rule says that if you practice something for 10,000 hours, there's every chance that you would become an expert in that field. Now, Alan takes an example that we do every day, most of us, of course, which is driving. We drive car from our place to office, to go on, depends on where we live and where we work. We drive at least, let's say, 1 hour a day. And if you drive for 10,000 days, which means you would have covered 10,000 hours of driving, that should make us an expert in driving. Now, will that make us eligible to participate in a F1 race, car race? That sounds ridiculous, isn't it? It's not, because we are not practicing to take part in a race. We are just taking us from point A to point B. So, the intention based on which we do something makes a whole difference. Even if you practice for 10,000 hours, that doesn't mean that you would become an expert unless you do with an intention as to what you want to do with that practice. So that's what this law becomes very important, law of intentionality. When we talk about law of intentionality, Dr. John Maxwell says, for personal growth, he gives 3 steps. He says, if you want to have a personal growth, you ask the big question now. The question that where you want to go, why you want to go, how you want to go, what is that you want to do by going there? These are the questions that you have to answer before you even start the journey. The second point that he says is, when you talk about the growth, you have to face the fear. Many situations that happens that we have a fear of doing something and then we stop doing it. So you should be ready to face the fear if you want to have a personal growth, if you want to go on the journey of personal growth. The third, he said that do it now. Don't postpone it. Do it now. See, what happens when you don't have intention of growth? John Maxwell says, in fact, he gives an example. He gives a list of things that happens during the difference between accidental growth and intentional growth. See, there can be a growth even if you don't have intention. Life definitely gives you some kind of a growth based on what you do and how many hours you do. Over a period of time, definitely you will find some growth. But that is an accidental growth. The difference between accidental growth and intentional growth is this. See, the accidental growth, it happens that we always say that we want to do something tomorrow. Whereas in intentional growth, we do it now. In accidental growth, we wait for the growth to come to us. Whereas in intentional growth, we go towards the growth. In accidental growth, we learn from mistakes, only of our mistakes. Whereas in intentional growth, we also learn from others' mistakes. We read a lot, we learn. Most importantly, accidental growth depends on good luck. Whereas intentional growth, yes, of course, luck definitely has to be there, but then we make opportunity for luck to work in our favor. In accidental growth, quit very early and often. Whereas in intentional growth, we don't quit. We want to see the result. Sometimes in accidental growth, you may fall into bad habits. Whereas in intentional growth, we develop good habits so that we grow in the path that we have established for ourselves. Now, these are a few things. And one of the other important thing is in accidental growth, we only rely on talent. Whereas in intentional growth, talent doesn't always win. So you work on so many things. Discipline, that is what makes a huge difference between talent and accidental growth and intentional growth. Having said that, John Maxwell also talks about a few points, that gaps, growth gaps that we face in our life when we start the journey of personal growth. The first thing that he talks about is, the first gap that John Maxwell talks about is assumption gap. See, we assume that growth is going to happen. We put hard work, obviously we are going to grow. No doubt hard work is required. I just want to quote an example which my professor used to give me when I was in my college days. He says, if only hard work will make a person successful, the most successful people on this world should be those who are engaged in manual labor. See, the people who are working on loading and unloading, they should be the one who should be most successful. But that's not the case. So the assumption that hard work is going to result in success is not true. Hard work in the right place, in the right time is going to make a huge difference. Like how we saw in the Alan Gannett's example of 10,000 hours of practice, but with the intention of doing something. That's what is very important. So working towards the goal is what will make one grow personally and also in all the other manner. Talk about the second gap, knowledge gap. See, when we desire to do something, we want to grow in a particular field, obviously there is a lack of knowledge in that field. We are not experts. Not all of us are experts. We become experts over a period of time. John Maxwell says that when he started his career, he compared himself with many of his counterparts and he realized that most of them had the same challenge that he had, the gap in knowledge. See, what happens is, in intentional growth, you go towards the knowledge. As you keep working, you gain knowledge and you become an expert. So the knowledge gap always exists. It's that you start working and you fill that gap. The third gap that John Maxwell talks about is the timing gap. Many times that we say, okay, I will wait for another day to start. The timing is not right. I've heard this example. It's a joke actually I heard. It's about two people jumping in a parachute. As the parachute was coming down, they reached about 5,000 feet. The first person opened his parachute and he told the other person that you have to open the parachute now. The other guy said, still 5,000 feet. 4,000 feet. He said, still I have 4,000 feet. 3,000 feet. I still have 3,000 feet. 2,000 feet. I still have 2,000 feet. 1,000 feet. I still have 1,000 feet. I don't think the parachute opened for that person. It doesn't make a difference after that. So it's like same thing, timing gap. If you think that you can grow later, no, you are growing now. Intentional growth has to be continuous and instant. So you have to start the action. The action should be from now. You don't wait for tomorrow. That's the timing gap. The third gap Dr. John Maxwell speaks about is mistake gap. We fear mistakes. We fear failures. See, when I was in grade 1, I think, I was participating in a speech contest in my school. I was doing great. I went on stage and I started really well. And then I saw my mom sitting in the front row. I froze. I was, at the end of my time, I was pulled out from the stage. I was crying inconsolably. It took me 10 years to go back to the stage. The fear that I may stop in between. And I failed, definitely I failed, but I never gave up after that. So, mistake happens. The gap will always be there, but you have to keep working to fix that gap. The next gap that Dr. John Maxwell speaks about is a perfection gap. See, some people, may not be all, some people wait because they want to do it only perfectly. They don't want to do anything without perfection. I know one of my juniors, when I was doing chartered accountancy in India, this person was skipping the exams, saying that he wanted to score all India rank. You know what? He skipped 3 attempts. And 4th attempt, when he appeared, he just passed. He couldn't score all India rank. All he did was wasted 3 attempts. So perfection never happens. So don't have to wait for it. You keep working and you will excel in what you are doing. The next gap Dr. John Maxwell speaks about is the inspiration gap. People wait for inspiration. I am not getting enough inspiration to start this. You know, Dr. John Maxwell quotes from one of the magazines that he read in a hospital. It says, motivation is not going to strike like a lightning. Motivation It's not going to be injected on you by a nurse or a doctor. Motivation, my friend, has to come from within. And that happens when you start working on a project, on a work. You keep doing work, you will get inspired, you will get motivated. So motivation gap, that's the only way to get motivation is to start working. Comparison gap. We have this attitude, we start something and we look for people in the same field and say that that person is an expert, he is doing so good, I'm nowhere near him. The point is, when he started, maybe he was much below you. You don't even know that. So keep working. You will reach that place. The next gap Dr. John Maxwell speaks about is expectation gap. See, when we have this expectation that we should achieve result immediately, instant results, doesn't happen. There is nothing called overnight success. Any overnight success that you have witnessed, my friend, remember this, that person would have definitely worked over many nights to achieve that overnight success. So, expectation that you should result should flow in immediately, that's a gap. It will never happen. Keep working. The result will definitely flow over a period of time. So these are the gaps that happens, that comes when we start our journey of growth. Friends, John Maxwell gives us few points at the end. What he says is that if you want to have a personal growth, especially which is an intentional personal growth, define where you want to go, how you want to go, what you want to go, why you want to go. These are the questions that you should answer, and do it now. Don't wait for things to happen. Start doing it. And then list out what are the gaps that you are facing. These are few points that Dr. Maxwell has given. The gaps, the expectation gap, the comparison gap, inspiration gap, perfection gap, timing gap, knowledge gap, assumption gap. List out the gaps that you are facing in your life when you start doing, when you're on the journey of the growth, and start acting on it. This will definitely help you to grow in your life. This is the first law of growth. Out of 15 invaluable laws of growth, this is the first law of growth, law of intentionality by Dr. John C. Maxwell. This is Meenakshi Sundaram here. I hope you enjoyed what I just presented to you, and it's definitely useful to you, I hope. Please leave your comments if you feel that there is something that I can do better. I'll be covering the remaining laws. Another 14 laws are there, which I'll be covering over a period of time through these videos. Thank you.